Picture a crisp, golden morning on the sprawling campus of one of America's most elite universities, a place where history seeps from the ivy-covered walls and every lecture hall pulses with the promise of greatness. The air is cool, carrying the faint rustle of falling leaves. But inside one of those grand rooms, something heavier brews. It's not the usual hum of intellectual fervor you'd expect from an advanced calculus class. No, it's a tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. A stillness that feels like the world holding its breath before a storm breaks loose. Students shuffle in, their sneakers squeaking on the polished hardwood, and settle into rows of wooden desks that stretch toward the front. They're here for Dr. Linda Markham, a mathematical legend whose name once echoed through academic halls like a thunderclap. She's a woman who could unravel the most twisted equations with a flick of her wrist, whose lectures used to leave students scribbling furiously just to keep up. But lately, the chatter's shifted. Whispers snake through dorms and dining halls about how her classes have morphed into something else. Less about numbers, more about agendas. And today she's about to walk into a battle she'll never forget. The lecture hall feels vast, almost cathedral-like, with its towering ceilings swallowing the usual buzz of pre-class chatter. Sunlight streams through tall windows, casting long shadows across the desks, but the mood is anything but warm. At the front, a massive whiteboard looms. Normally a chaotic canvas of derivatives, integrals, and proofs that mark this class as a gauntlet for the brightest minds. But not this morning. Today it's stark, almost menacing, with just one sentence scrawled in bold black marker. Today's topic: redefining academic priorities. No formulas, no graphs, just 5 words that hit like a warning bell, ringing through the silence. Students exchange wary glances, their notebooks open but pens hovering, unsure. Something's wrong. They can feel it creeping up their spines. In the back row, tucked against the wall like a shadow among the sea of backpacks and laptops, sits a tall figure in a jet black suit. It's pressed so perfectly it might as well have been carved from obsidian. No wrinkles, no slouch, a stark contrast to the casual chaos of college life. Barron Trump. Yeah, that Barron Trump. He's not your typical undergrad. No hoodie slung over his shoulder, no earbuds dangling, no coffee cup gripped like a lifeline. He's an outsider in this world, quiet and reserved. Dodging the spotlight, his name drags behind him like a chain. His classmates know who he is. How could they not? The whispers follow him down every hallway, but they don't know him. He keeps his distance, sidestepping the small talk, the curious stares, the inevitable questions. What they can't see, what no one in this room even dreams of, is the mind ticking beneath that cool, composed surface. A mind with a certified 170 IQ. A mind about to turn this lecture hall into a battlefield and leave it in ashes. The door swings open with a sharp creak and Dr. Markham strides in, her heels clicking against the floor like a metronome, counting down to chaos. She's got that presence, shoulders back, chin high, a stack of notes clutched under her arm like a weapon. Her gray blazer is crisp, her glasses perched on her nose, but there's something off today. Her usual confidence has an edge, a predatory glint that sharpens as she scans the room. She drops her things on the podium with a deliberate thud and turns to the class, her eyes sweeping the crowd like a hawk circling for prey. "Mathematics," she declares, her voice slicing through the stillness with the force of a judge's gavel, "is critical, no doubt about it. But it's time we made space for something bigger. Issues that matter beyond these walls, beyond your textbooks." The room shifts uneasily. A few students fidget, their fingers tightening around pens, their brows furrowing. This isn't the calculus they signed up for, not even close. She snatches a remote from the podium and clicks. A PowerPoint slide blazes onto the screen behind her. Not a single equation, not a hint of math, Just a bar chart of gender stats in STEM fields, all stark lines and cold percentages. In today's world, she says, her tone dipping into a biting condescension, we need to step away from abstract theories and dig into real-world applications like social justice. The words land like bricks, each one thudding into the silence. Her gaze roams the room, lingering on certain faces with a knowing, almost accusatory edge. Some of you, she adds, her voice dropping lower, might need to wake up and realize your spot in this class isn't purely about skill. The air grows heavier, the unspoken target clear as day. That's when it happens. From the back, a single hand rises. Slow, steady, unshaken, Barron's hand. Dr. Markham's eyes narrow just for a split second, a flicker of surprise breaking her mask. She didn't expect pushback, not this early, and definitely not from him. She tries to barrel past it, pressing on with her sermon. Family connections, wealth, she says, clicking to a new slide with a flourish. These things stack the deck in education. Give some of you a leg up you didn't earn. The jabs aimed square at Barron, sharp and deliberate, meant to draw blood. A few students sneak glances his way, waiting for him to flinch, to shrink. But his face stays calm, a blank slate. That hand still raised like a quiet, stubborn flag. She can't dodge it forever. Yes, Mr. Trump, she finally snaps, her voice a whip crack of irritation laced with mockery. Got something to add to our little chat about privilege and education? The room freezes. Every head swivels. They've seen Barron ace every test without breaking a sweat, watched him linger in the library after hours, patiently untangling proofs for classmates who couldn't keep up. But this feels different. This feels like the spark before a wildfire, the moment something massive is about to ignite. No one knows what's coming, not even Dr. Markham. Barron lowers his hand and stands, his movement smooth, almost too calm for the storm brewing around him. When he speaks, his voice is low but firm, cutting through the tension like a blade through silk. Dr. Markham, he starts. I think calculus is the backbone of everything. Theory, application, the works. We're all here to dive deeper into it. Wouldn't gutting the core curriculum hold every student back no matter where they started? His words are simple, measured, but they hit like a thunderbolt reverberating through the room. A few heads nod, tentative at first, then bolder. He's not just challenging her, he's peeling back her whole argument, layer by flimsy layer. Dr. Markham's face flushes, a spark of fury igniting in her eyes. She didn't see this coming, not a cool, reasoned counter, and definitely not from him. Mr. Trump, she fires back, dragging his last name out like it's a curse word. Maybe you're the one who needs a lesson in how privilege props up the system. Not everyone had elite tutors and fancy prep schools. It's a cheap shot, venomous and personal, meant to rattle him, to shove him back into his seat. The class holds its breath, waiting for him to crack under the weight. But Barron doesn't bite. He smiles, just a faint, disarming curve of his lips that throws her off balance. You're right about one thing, Professor, he says, his tone steady as granite. I've been lucky with my education. That's exactly why I think we owe it to everyone to keep the bar high, so every student can climb to it. The room tilts. It's not defiance. It's a lifeline, a call to reason wrapped in velvet. And it's the last thing she wanted to hear. Her jaw clenches, her fingers tightening around the remote. She's losing control, and she can feel it slipping through her grasp like sand. So you think you know better than me about academic standards? She snaps, sarcasm dripping like acid. Tell me, what makes you the big expert here? Barron doesn't flinch. I'm no expert, he replies, calm as a still lake. Just a student who loves math and believes it can rise above politics. He nods at the barren whiteboard. Why waste time on privilege when we could unravel calculus instead? The words hang there, A quiet, electric dare. Dr. Markham's eyes narrow to slits, her mind racing. She's not about to let this kid, steer her ship off course. She storms to the whiteboard, snatches a marker, and starts scribbling. Her hand moves fast, almost frantic, sketching out a monster of an equation. Multivariable calculus with tangled integrals, sprawling series expansions, a beast that could choke a grad student mid-breath. The class gasps, a collective jolt running through them. One kid mutters under his breath, "That's PhD-level insanity." She steps back, smirking like she's just slammed down a winning hand. "Since you're so obsessed with math, Mr. Trump," she says, her voice thick with triumph, "solve this, unless you'd rather chat about your cushy life instead." It's a trap. Cold, calculated, and public as hell, she picked this nightmare knowing it's leagues beyond anything she's taught. A humiliation waiting to unfold. The room buzzes, tension spiking to a fever pitch. Everyone's waiting for him to crash and burn, to slink back to his seat in defeat. Barron doesn't blink. He stands, walks to the front with that same unshakable calm, and takes the marker from her hand. Her smirk widens. She's sure she's got him dead to rights. But then he turns to the class. "Before I start," he says, his voice clear and steady, "this problem's got multiple paths. Want the standard solution or a slicker one I dug up from Leibniz's original papers?" Dr. Markham's face freezes, her breath catching. "You've read Leibniz?" she blurts, disbelief cracking her composure like glass. "In German," Barron says, casual, as if he's mentioning last night's dinner. Translations miss the elegance. The room goes dead silent, a pin-drop stillness. He turns to the board and starts writing. His hand glides with a surgical precision, each line crisp, deliberate, almost beautiful. "This first step," he says, calm and measured, "leans on Euler's 1755 trick. It tames the chaos into something clean." The class leans in, spellbound, eyes wide. Dr. Markham's smirk fades as she tracks his work, her gaze darting across the board, searching for a flaw. He pauses between steps, breaking it down like a professor, not a student, patient, clear, making it click. Phones pop out, kids are filming, jaws dropping, whispers rippling. Halfway through, he stops and looks at her. "The standard way needs another board," he says. "Leibniz's is tighter, more elegant." "Your call, Professor." It's a question, sure, but it's also a dagger. Proof of a depth she tried to bury under her snide remarks. She's stunned, her earlier swagger evaporating like mist. Then a hand shoots up from the middle row. "Can we see both?" Sarah Chen, a quiet girl who barely speaks, pipes up, her voice trembling but sure. "This is clearing up last week's mess for me." The class murmurs, heads nodding, a ripple of agreement spreading. Before Dr. Markham can scrape together a response, the door slams open with a bang. Dean Richardson barrels in, all bluster and bulk, a known ally in her political crusades. His ties askew, his face flushed. "Linda, emergency meeting, curriculum stuff," he barks, his voice booming. She seizes the escape hatch, her lifeline in the chaos. "We'll pick this up later," she says, turning to bolt, her heels already clicking toward the door. But Barron's voice cuts through like a blade through fog. "Professor," he says, firm but polite, "you challenged me in front of everyone. Walking away now says more about integrity than I ever could." The dean bristles, his chest puffing out. "You implying something, kid?" "No implication, sir," Barron cuts in, cool as ice. "Just facts. She threw down a gauntlet about merit. I picked it up. Will she see it through?" The room's electric. Phones are rolling, capturing every heartbeat of this standoff. Dr. Markham's cornered, her escape route crumbling under the weight of her own words. Then Barron twists the knife, He hands her the marker. Or maybe, he says with a faint, disarming smile, you'd like to take a swing at it first? You said connections don't count, just knowledge. Surely you've got this in the bag. Silence crashes down like a tidal wave. Her knuckles go white around the marker, her hand trembling just enough to betray her. That equation, her weapon of choice, now stares her down like a loaded gun pointed at her own head. She stammers, her voice cracking, then explodes. This is ridiculous. She hurls the marker to the floor where it clatters with a hollow ring. Just a spoiled brat trying to undermine me? The dean jumps in, his voice booming. Let's all cool off here, but Barron's voice rises above the fray. No, he says, scooping up the marker with a steady hand. Let's finish this. What happens next is pure, unadulterated magic. In 5 minutes flat, he nails it. Both solutions, Standard and Leibniz, laid out in flawless, jaw-dropping strokes across the board. The lines flow like a symphony, each step a note in a crescendo of brilliance. The class loses it, applause erupts, a roar that shakes the walls. Even the dean's jaw drops, his bluster forgotten. Dr. Markham's face drains from red to ghostly white, her whole narrative collapsing like a house of cards in a hurricane. But Barron's not done, not by a long shot. He turns to them, his voice steady and deep, resonating through the chaos. Math doesn't care about politics or privilege, he says. It's truth, pure and simple. When we let bias cloud it, we miss the real magic, the chance to grow, to connect, to understand. A voice breaks through from the back. Michael Chen, a scholarship kid who rarely speaks, his words sharp and raw. Why ditch math for someone's agenda? Others stand, their chairs scraping the floor. I'm here for calculus, not guilt trips, a girl shouts from the front. The room's spiraling, a powder keg ready to blow, but Barron steps into the breach. Professor, he says, loud and clear, his voice cutting through the rising tide. Your math chops are unreal. I've learned more from your technical stuff than I can say. Let's lean into that. I'll help out after class. Mix your theory with real-world grit. It's a lifeline, a chance to save face and turn the tide. She stares at him, then at the class, really sees them for the first time. Their faces a mix of frustration, hope, and hunger for something real. I've been wrong, she whispers, her voice barely audible, then louder, stronger. I've fought privilege so hard, I turned into the bigot I swore I'd never be. You didn't just solve that, you showed me what leading really looks like. The dean pounces, ever the opportunist. This could set a precedent for the department, but chaos erupts outside before he can finish. A mob's forming in the hall, students from other classes, signs waving, "Math, not politics, and merit over everything." Videos are blowing up online, the clash going viral in real time. Barron walks to the door, his steps steady, his presence commanding. If you're here to learn, he calls, his voice ringing with natural authority, come in, there's room. Students flood the hall, packing every inch, spilling into the aisles. He grabs the marker, turns back to the board. Who's up for calculus in the real world? The next hour's pure fire, learning that burns itself into campus legend, a masterclass in math and meaning that leaves everyone buzzing. Weeks later, the class triples in size, students flocking not just for equations, but for something bigger. Dr. Markham rediscovers her spark, her lectures sharp and pure again. Barron runs study groups that bridge theory and life, turning late nights into breakthroughs. It's a haven now. Merit rules, questions fly, and politics fade into the background. One quiet afternoon, as he's guiding a kid through a brutal proof, she approaches, her steps tentative. You could have torched me that day, she says, her voice soft but heavy. Instead, you pulled me back from the edge. Your dad'd be proud. Barron looks up, smiles, a real one, warm and steady. It's not about breaking anyone, Professor. It's about building us all up. He's still in the back row, still helping, still proving the real privilege isn't power or name. It's learning and passing it on.
Morning light on ivy walls, history whispers down the halls. A legend walks in, fierce and proud, but silence settles on the crowd. Equations lost in words of war, truth is drowning at the door. One hand rises calm and strong, a battle starts, it won't last long. Raise the bar, don't tear it down. Let the numbers wear the crown. Merit speaks where bias fades. Truth survives when light invades. A challenge thrown, a line is drawn, but knowledge fights and carries on. With steady hands and sharpened mind, he leaves the noise and doubt behind. Raise the bar, don't tear it down. Let the numbers wear the crown. Merit speaks where bias fades. Truth survives when light invades. No name, no power, no silver chain, just the hunger to serve.